Hold on. Oh, there we go. Everybody, welcome to this episode of Think Business. Looking forward to talking with Don Finley. Don, you were on a couple weeks ago, and at the very, very end, you talked about how you had recently climbed Kilimanjaro. So I said, oh, let's come back and let's talk about that. Because I think anytime, we're talking about, something that requires such a level of discipline, I love talking about stuff like that. I actually ran into somebody today when I was on the way to work at Starbucks, and they were 59 years old. They had just finished the New York Marathon, and we were talking about that the marathon. I ran the Free Press Marathon when I was 25, and we were talking about just how exciting the level of discipline of the training was, and then there's the mindset to get through to do a marathon, to run the marathon, and then to get through the last 6 miles. Kilimanjaro, about I think 35 to 50,000 people attempt to kind of summit it a year. But I wanted to have you back and talk about discipline and mindsets and what the experience was. So I'll kind of give you the floor, but let's start with just kind of the decision to do it. How did that come about?
Yeah, so the decision to do things for me is really just hey, this sounds crazy, and I know that it will stretch me in ways that I don't understand. And so like I've always loved being outdoors, hiking, getting into nature. I've done possibly maybe a handful of 12,000, 13, 14,000 feet, mountains and hikes in the past, but Kilimanjaro, we started planning probably about like 9 months to a year before.
Yeah.
It's a 6-day climb going up. It's 1 day coming down. So 7 days in total. The big thing is most of it is walking, right? Like you're going to walk a couple miles a day. You're going to do it in gear that you probably haven't been familiar with if you're not an avid hiker. And then additionally, you're going to be doing it at elevations that you never were at for like most of your existence. And the big challenge I would say was not the physical strenuous nature of hiking or of any of that. It was the actual, like the altitude and the effect that has on your body is when you go up in elevation, your kidneys are working overtime. And so in order for your kidneys to kind of process everything, you need to be hydrated. And so that means even on a light day that you're consuming a gallon of water. So one of the activities that we were looking at was how much water am I consuming on a daily basis? And like you may only be consuming a couple liters of water. And like that was one of the things that we actually trained for was drinking a gallon of water before we started.
Yeah.
But like we flew.
I have a question on that. So I'm 52. I grew up, I went out west when I was younger. I would ski out west when I was younger. The altitude never bothered me.
Yeah.
In my 50s, all of a sudden it started bothering me. And I drink about a gallon of water a day. And when I have recently been to Winter Park and Aspen, the last 2 winters, the altitude dramatically affected me, where like from midnight till like 6 a.m. It was so weird. It was just between those hours. I had the worst altitude sickness, and then it would just go away. It was so odd. At like 6:01, it would just go away, and at 12, it would just kick in. And so I can't imagine how the unknown of how it was going to kind of kick in, because I wasn't expecting it because I had never had any issues for the last 30 years. Yeah,
which is kind of amazing. Like like you're never, what it's the Chinese saying of like no man steps in the same river twice, because the river is never the same and the man is never the same kind of thing, right? Like for us it was more just preparation, right? Like you kind of want to understand that you're going to be prepared for whatever the mountain has to throw at you,
right?
And at the same time, none of us knew how we would react. And I think we were 4 days into our climb, and my tent mate and I were making fun of our other people on the climb and how they would, thinking that they were going to get altitude sickness. Yeah, that next night, her and I were in the tent just like reeling over, kind of going, oh, I wish I drank more water today.
Yeah, yeah.
from that experience. And so I don't know why it hits at some points and it doesn't hit at other times. But that's
Yeah,
fascinating to hear that you went
bizarre.
from midnight to 6.
Yeah, I know it was weird. But wait, so I want to talk about what the mountain, kind of gives you because I every it's the story is different for I would imagine everybody who's climbed. Everybody's story is going to be different. Everybody's in their mind and has their own mindset on the way up. Everybody is getting into their probably transformational mindset where there's light and dark kind of coming. And so what did the mountain throw at you? Like, what was your journey that you didn't know what was the journey from within that you experienced that you didn't know the mountain was going to give you?
So I had dinner with some friends the night before I left, right? So we're out having this beautiful meal, and one of my friends recommends that he's like, "Have you heard of this author Ryan Holiday?"
Yeah,
And he's got all these books on stoicism, and he's like, "I'd recommend The Obstacle Is the Way." He's like, "That's
yeah,
been my favorite one." So I pick up the Audible of it, and so we fly to Amsterdam, and then from Amsterdam we fly to Kilimanjaro. We land in Kilimanjaro, and I am like maybe a couple chapters in on this book. But the Stoic principle of the obstacle is the way is basically like, hey, if I'm, what ends up happening is the king of this village ends up saying, you know what, I'm going to see how my people react to adversity, and so he takes a boulder and he puts it on the right in the middle of the path that goes from the town to the marketplace. And he sees people bringing their goods to the market, get to the boulder, turn around. Or if they're fortunate, they can just go off on the side and kind of like make it. But one gentleman comes, he's got his cart. He can't go off into the ditch. He can't go anywhere else. And so what he does, he goes into the woods, finds a lever, pushes the boulder to the side. The king comes out and goes, "That's fantastic. Here's a bag of gold for like what you're doing." And he's like, "I don't need the gold." He's like, "My goal was to get to the market to sell my goods. This was the obstacle that was in my way, and I just approached it." So we land in Kilimanjaro. It's midnight. We are tired. And all of a sudden, you just see all the bags come off the plane. For some odd reason, my tent mate and our bags never arrived. So that's how we started our journey.
yeah,
And it was so nice to have this statement of like, you know what, the obstacle is the way. We're getting to the top of that mountain. It
yeah,
didn't start how we wanted it to. I'm not going to have like all my creature comforts that I had in my bag. Fortunately, I was wearing my hiking boots. I had a pair of hiking pants on. Like, you separated your clothes in enough way that if this happened, you're able to continue on. And then the
yeah.
first hotel that we stayed at, they
But wait,
had
hold on. So why do you think that happened to you? Like, what lesson was what was um what was the lesson there? Like, why you? What were you supposed to glean from that?
I found it to be just a gift in knowing where you're going and recognizing that like what happens on the way there is part of that story,
Yeah,
right? It doesn't have to be smooth sailing. And additionally, like a minor inconvenience as far as your bag not being there doesn't have to stop you from enjoying the trip.
yeah,
And so like my luggage was my hiking backpack. And so we stayed at this hotel that first night. And the next day, we're talking to them, and they're like, "Yeah, we don't know when your bag is going to arrive, but when they do, we'll send some people on the trail to get to you. But in the meantime, pack a bag from our like misfit clothes and misfit kind of like adventures that like you have." And so, like, I got jackets, we had hats from them. I went from, having my nice hiking gear to having a JanSport backpack that we all kind of had in college, kind of
yeah,
as being that, and a bladder from my bag. Somehow wasn't in my hiking bag, so I had that strapped across the back. The first day, John, one of the straps breaks on that backpack. And so I'm tying it up. The second day, it breaks from a different spot. And now we got twine going. The third day, that bag breaks again. And it
yeah,
was literally just a constant reminder of like, hey, why are you here? What is the goal? The goal is to get up the mountain. Everything else that happens is kind of part of this story that just kind of helps you. And so like, that's what the mountain gives you. It gives you adversity. It gives you something to like question what you're doing. And given that you have no distractions, there's not cell phone signal. There's not really anything else that you can be doing. And once you get above the tree line, there really isn't a lot of atmosphere for you to kind of distract yourself in. I mean, in the rainforest parts of it, it's gorgeous. There's like just beauty all around you. But then once you get above that tree line, it's just rock. And it's kind of like a desert landscape that you are now above the clouds looking out. And that's gorgeous. But the mountain's going to question you. It's going to provide that extra push that you need to get to. And this isn't even on like the hard parts of the hike. This is just the adversity of every day.
Yeah. And so as you're going through each day, thanks for that. As you're going through each day, what were the transformational steps? Day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then day 7 on your way down.
Yeah. And I would say every day was that reminder of here's why I'm here. Here's where I'm going after, because days 1 is exciting. Days 2, you're still new. Day 3 and 4, it's kind of boring, right? Like you're doing some of the similar things. You don't have anything to really distract you, but you do have that appreciation for why you're there. And so really during the times of when you're in that struggle mode or in that space of like, is the goal really worth it? That valley of disillusionment, it was key to stay honed on like, hey, here's why I'm here. Here's the excitement that I'm building up to, and here's where I'm at. And then you get to day 5 and day 6, and day 5, you're camping out at the base of the second peak, and you're finally you're right around like 13,500 feet. Day 6, you just basically walk across the saddleback, so you're not really gaining that much elevation, maybe a couple hundred feet, but you're at your base camp before you climb, and then you have like 3 or 4 hours of sleep that day. You get up at midnight and you're on the trail by 1 o'clock in the morning, doing the switchback, going back. And that night you're going from 14,000 to the 19,000 feet. And so it is a significant change in your elevation. And that one is you're in the dark, and the only thing that you can see are the headlamps of people in front of you and the stars above the caldera.
Yeah.
And like,
so cool.
It is amazing. And like, you are so cold at that point where like, if you have an insulated water lines, they're frozen. If you have my Nalgene bottle at that point needed to be shaked constantly because it was going to freeze over. And like, we even put like salt water tabs into our water so that it would drop the freezing point. And like, that was also freezing as well.
Yeah.
It was a constant reminder to breathe. As we got to those elevation points of 19,000 feet, your heart is racing at like 140, 150 beats per minute, just standing there. The air looks exactly the same as it does, at sea level, but you are not getting enough oxygen. And so like just taking steps and trying to drink water at the same time, I felt like I was going to pass out.
Yeah.
But like getting to that caldera, you get there right around like 6:30 in the morning. And in August, when we went, it was just this gorgeous sunrise coming up over that second peak. Yeah. And that was another moment of realization in my life that like, this is the most beautiful sunrise that I have ever seen. It is the one that I work the hardest to ever witness. And in that moment, I looked over at my friends and they all had this look of awe on their face. And I was like, nah, this is okay. And like in that moment of recognizing that the only thing holding me back from enjoying this was myself.
Yeah.
And so I was the one that was getting in the way of all my joy, all the happiness that I could ever experience, because I was holding on to an idea that it had to be different than it was. And that was an experience that has touched every other area of my life.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, that's so interesting. How did it spill over? How did it spill over? There's certain times like when I ran the marathon, I've done a sprint triathlon. I've climbed Tetons. I've done certain things. I went to wilderness camp when I was younger and had to portage canoes over my head when I was 16. There's certain pieces that I tap into that a lot, right? It's like when I'm doing something that seems so difficult, I do my best to tap into something that was difficult that I did in the past. And so how do you tap into that? How do you come off the mountain changed? There was a book I read, it had to be 25, 30 years ago. It was called Living Your Yoga. And it talks about, did you ever read it?
No, I haven't, but
so,
it sounds like a book I would enjoy.
Yeah. So basically the book is, long story short, like anybody can do yoga, but can you live yoga off the mat, in the real world? And so how do you take those lessons of what you learned at the top and the sunset and evolve and transform and change in the real world, in business and life, et cetera?
And the key moment for me was recognizing that like the joy, the happiness, it doesn't start from the outside. It starts from within.
Yeah.
And like being able to draw upon the idea that we're always filtering life through our own experiences. And if you go back to the yoga side of it, there's the emotions trapped in the body are called samskaras, right? And so like every time that you like have an experience like we're having right now, there's also certain things that are getting processed through our past experiences.
Right.
And so to be able to recognize like, hey, is this a moment that is truly in flow for both of us or for one of us? Or am I holding on to an emotion from the past, whether it's like happiness, whether it's sorrow, what is it that is holding me from being ever present in this eternal now?
Yeah.
That was really a big gift. And I can tell you that like we just negotiated a deal with a new CEO for one of my businesses. And he has a different set of capabilities than I do. Far above where I have been with some of like our work. And additionally, he's the right man for the right time for this business.
Yeah.
In negotiations with him, since it was a field of area that he's much more apt, and I recognized that I was coming in at a deficit, I just focused on what was happening in my body. And so understanding that like when something was coming up that was triggering like a lack of safety, I recognized that in the negotiation, I needed to address that. But if I could stay open through that and not close down as far as like what the body was doing, I could use that to our advantage. And so I was recognizing like, all right, here's what's my experiences. Is this something from the past or is this in the moment? If it's in the moment, we can address it. And it allowed us to create a structure for his compensation for the business where everybody is aligned and everybody is happy about like what their opportunity is in the business.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. You think you would have been able to negotiate like you did or perform in business at the level that you perform had you not learned the lessons from climbing Kilimanjaro?
I think I would probably be miserable in all honesty. Like
Yeah.
before I climbed, and like this was 2018, right? At the end of 2018 when we did. So I have 5-6 years now of experience afterwards. And it was one of those moments in my life that significantly changed the course of where the business was going and how we were operating. I would probably be in a much lonelier situation as far as where we were, but I would also just have like all the earmarks of success anyways. So
yeah, but like you said, it starts from within. And so whatever it unlocks some level of additional fulfillment that was needed. And I think one of my favorite quotes by Tony Robbins is success without fulfillment equals failure. And so, Think Community, we talk a lot about that. My book is actually based on that quote in a way. So, look and find fulfillment. And if you're not getting it, figure out, what you personally need to do for that fulfillment. I think it's different for everybody, Don. I think a lot of times we see people on social media, and they talk about what they did in their way. But everybody, like you talked about, everybody's reality, everybody's lens is completely different. And they need to figure out what that one minute thing is for them to kind of just get them to the transformational path that they're supposed to be on. So I think it's great. If you could summarize one lesson and piece of advice to someone who also maybe is lonely or stuck and needs to get unstuck, what would that be?
I would say, one, all of that starts from within, but at the same time, if you're lonely, feeling stuck, call a friend. That was we talk about this as an inner journey, but be able to climb that mountain with 5 of my closest friends was such a joy and has brought us closer over the years as well.
Yeah, it's great. Well, I appreciate you taking time to be on the show, talk about your journey, kind of, extract some of the highlights. Tell everybody real quickly your business and who your ideal clients are, and, and where they could even begin to, if they want to do the climb, where they can even begin to kind of start that journey on their own.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, feel free to reach out to me as far as, Kilimanjaro advice. My email is Don at FINdustries, FINdustries.co. That is, I'm happy to send you our itinerary and who we worked with to get that going. And then as far as our business, we are AI implementation experts, and we work with medium-sized enterprises as the primary client, but we work with startups as well as top or Fortune 10 companies as well on AI transformation.
Yeah, it's great. And I interviewed you a couple weeks ago, so go to my website, johndwoskin.com, and you can see from just a couple weeks ago our full interview on you and your business. Don, this was great. I really appreciate you taking time to come on again and share your journey. The discipline, the experience, the mindset, the inner transformation. I think it's so great. It's so needed for everybody in their own specific way. And I appreciate you sharing your story. I think community, if Don can help you, reach out for his business or for his itinerary. If I can help you for any business coaching, johndwoskin.com. Don, this was great. Thanks, buddy.
Thank you, John.